Hello, this is Keith Kreischer, Executive Director of the IoT M2M Council, or IMC. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to track 2 within this IoT Days fall event presented by the IMC. I certainly hope everyone joining us today is staying safe and well. The topic for this track is software bill of materials for IoT security. We'll have a large panel assembled to talk about it, which will last for 45 minutes or so. I guess we've got a whole hour, so stay tuned. The SBOM theme actually fits really well with the subject of security via extended detection and response, which was the topic for a panel we held earlier today. You can access both panels on demand, as well as a session we'll do tomorrow on asset tracking at the IMC website. Before we begin, I also wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenter. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. The presenters may answer questions at the end of each session, but please feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentations. And that's important. If you've got questions, please just queue them up in that Q&A widget. If we don't get to your question during the session today, we will get back to you. We'll have a record of your question, and the presenters will be given that information, and they will get back to you. For those of you that do not know the IMC, I'd like to give just perhaps a quick word of introduction. The IMC is the largest trade organization dedicated to the global IoT sector. Its membership is comprised of 28,000 rank and file adopter members who are individual enterprise users, product makers, including OEMs, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions. They join the IMC for our content, which in addition to events like these, includes conference programming for live events. We're the exclusive IoT partner for CES and Embedded World, as well as providing our adopters with use cases, white papers, newsletters, and blogs. We maintain the most extensive online library of IoT content that we know of. IMC adopters have to qualify for membership as IoT buyers. The IMC's Board of Governors includes 35 of the most influential IoT technology companies that provide solutions in the form of hardware, software, and connectivity. They join the IMC for access to our adopters for purposes of thought leadership, lead generation, promotion, and research. We encourage anybody attending today to check out our website at iotm2mcouncil.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Fred Jens, who is one of our IMC board governors, but also the CEO of Tartabit and former C-level at ILS and Telit. So I can't think of anyone better qualified to moderate today's panel discussion. Fred, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. Thanks for the introduction. This is a very pertinent topic, and I'm very excited to have a distinguished set of panelists to talk about IoT security and how a software bill of materials comes into play. Whether you're an IoT maker, an integrator, or an IoT enterprise buyer, some of the things we'll talk about today may seem a little new to you, or they may not. But if they are new, this is a really good chance for us to kind of open up the optics, let you understand what SBOM is, how it applies to the different levels in the IoT stack. And with that, we have 4 panelists from 4 very distinguished companies. So Florian from Telit Cinterion is basically a module hardware and MVNO provider. So they provide elements, very, very key elements in the solution stack. Prakash from Tata Communications. We have also Digi International with Harald. And then something unique, I think, that's going to help us wrap all this up is a company called SOMOS, and Sridhar is going to kind of give us a little bit of an overview of how they help companies manage this SBOM and ID management systems. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for the panelists and some questions. I encourage, please, the audience, enter the questions online. I will try to handle any and all that come in. And we'll start from the component side, and we'll end up at tree. So Florian, if you could take us through some of your introduction slides, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks. So yes, I'm Florian from Telit Cinterion, and yeah, I would like to highlight a little bit SBOM from the module perspective. So maybe a few words to Telit Cinterion. So Telit Cinterion is having an IoT offering which goes from edge to cloud. So we have communication modules on the left, then connectivity, and also lifecycle management. And all of these elements can also be combined to solutions which we can create tailored for specific use cases. So as the module is kind of an encapsulated communication component, it needs to be integrated into a device. And we have basically 3 steps there. So the process is that the approved module is integrated into the device with, of course, security in mind, also to achieve overall compliance, maybe approvals, whatever is necessary for the end device. We have then the compliance of the whole end device, where the module contributes certain parts, but of course the perspective for the overall compliance is always on the end device. And then we have the operation and the life cycle management, which with IoT can go for quite a long time. So that's also a very important point. So basically, the communication module has to be tied into the application to form the device to contribute the communication part, and all of this then in the end, of course, is subject to compliance and also to an overall security picture. If we are zooming in, and this gets us a little closer to the SBOM discussion, is that the overall then connected IoT device can be very complex or can have a complex architecture. It can be tiny, but there can be a lot of different elements, and it's often there might be some, let's say, open source parts. There could be a Linux running, but there could also be just more an microcontroller centric architecture, or even running just a bare metal OS type of super loop. So the variety is very big, the potential variety, and that also, of course, has an impact on an SBOM perspective. And maybe another additional interesting part here is that especially for cellular connected IoT devices, there's a close relationship also with the network. There can be also a close relationship with peripherals, which could be almost part of the device. But in case of the cellular network, it's really a close interaction, kind of, really a tight interworking with a lot of commands going back and forth, data exchange, and so on with the network. So this is also, I think, very important to understand, because it adds a lot of complexity, and in an overall security view, that is also something not to keep out of mind there. So that's my overview, my outline, just to show the starting point from the module into the device.
Thank you, Florian. So if we go from the module-centric element, if we move up into more of a device-centric package, I'm pleased to introduce Harald from Digi International.
Thank you, Fred. So when we you're probably asking, who's Digi, and why are we on the panel today? When you look at Digi, we're a US-based IoT solutions company. We're based in Minnesota. We're publicly traded, and we're in the market for almost 40 years. Back then, it wasn't called IoT. It was called, I guess, M2M prior to IoT, and then before that, it had various names. So what we do is we're solving mission and business-critical communication challenges for our customers by securely connecting machines, people, and places together. So we're kind of the plumbers behind, you know, our customers' IoT solutions. We do this and we enable our customers to build, deploy, and manage their solution. We can also manage it for them if that's not their core competency. And, you know, customers love us because of the reliability, scalability, security, and manageability of our solutions. And, you know, one of those pillars, and that's why we're here today, is to talk more about, you know, how security has changed and what you need to do today versus maybe, you know, 10, 20 years ago. So why is IoT security more important than ever? When you look back, you know, 20, 30 years ago, most IoT systems were installed as set it and forget it. You know, and sadly, even today, still a lot of systems are installed like that, without the ability to remotely monitor what's going on, to manage them, and to do over-the-air updates to keep them secure. But in today's security landscape, you know, that mindset is a huge risk and a disaster waiting to happen. You know, why is that? For one, the threat actors are getting much more sophisticated. So we probably all heard about Patch Tuesday, right, where the big, you know, companies bring out security patches, you know, every first Tuesday of the month. But then what you might not have heard of is Exploit Wednesday, where kind of the bad actors, you know, kind of reverse engineer those patches, right, and try to, you know, get to the devices before, you know, they're being patched. Also, compute acceleration makes it much easier to hack previously secure IoT products. So you have to constantly update them and constantly raise the bar to keep your deployment secure. You know, like we, you know, use AI to, you know, like ChatGPT and other tools to, you know, become more productive and become more efficient, right? Bad actors use those tools as well, right, for the exact opposite, right? You can rent botnets today to run campaigns, right, like a marketing tool. And you can, you know, some bad actors offer ransomware as a service, right, where they monetize on these things that make it really easy to get your IoT device, you know, taken over. The other aspect why it's more important is regulatory compliance. So the lawmakers and regulators have seen that there's a lot of need and a huge gap relative to cybersecurity, and you know, they're taking action, right? They see the risk, and you know, in the U.S. We have the executive order on cybersecurity. There is several industry-specific cybersecurity requirements, right, or frameworks. They're not necessarily mandatory, but they're out there. In Europe, you know, there's the Cyber Resiliency Act, and NIS2, and then upcoming Red Article 3.3D, which all kind of require some level of cybersecurity assessment, risk management, and you know, protection. Also in the UK there's PSTI. With those regulations come financial impacts that could either block the import or sale of products, or, you know, even impose severe penalties. You know, and we're not talking, you know, a couple of $1,000 or euros. We're talking, you know, tenth of millions of dollars or euros, or, you know, a percentage of the annual global revenue of a company if, you know, these products are not compliant. And, you know, also, if your company has cybersecurity insurance, those premiums are going up if you don't have really a good strategy in place. Lastly, on the corporate side, the corporate governance is has also stepped up with, you know, some of these regulations take the board of directors or the CEO and you know, make them more responsible and held them personally accountable if something bad would happen. So, you know, they need to protect the company and the individuals as well. And then on the CIO and CISO side, or the cybersecurity team that a company might have, and they're getting more involved. In the past, they were more on the IT side, but they're getting more involved in IoT and OT deployments. And those teams are often using cybersecurity frameworks like ISO 27001 or SOC 2, which require them to look deeper into security and into risk management for these OT deployments, so operation and technology deployments. So what can you do to bolster the security of your IoT deployment, and how can SBOM help? So first of all, what is SBOM? It's one tool. It's a software bill of material, which is part of supply chain risk management. And I like to think about it as a nutrition facts label for the software in an IoT device. So the recipe gives you, how everything is put together, but the nutrition fact label just shows you what's there, right? The key ingredients. And it does that. So the SBOM does that in a standardized format. And with that, it can provide transparency for the software that is being, and the software components that is in a specific IoT product. With SBOM, product manufacturers and customers alike can assess the security and risk of their IoT deployment over time. At the time of the release, as a manufacturer, I can make sure what I release to the public is secure. But then as the product ages and new security vulnerabilities are getting discovered, I can constantly assess that, right? And so can the customer, to make sure that they understand where the security and the risk of that particular product is, and it helps them to determine when it needs to be patched, or when it needs to be replaced. If there is no patches available anymore, right, then you need to think about replacement to mitigate that risk. Also, the SBOM is a multi-layer approach. So from the Digi side, from the device side, we're interested in learning more about the SBOM and the key ingredients of subcomponents like the cellular module from Telit that we're using in our products. Right, so we take that as input. We then build our own SBOM, which then would go to a partner or customer that builds the full solution, right? And they take these SBOMs and then combine them with their SBOM, to show to their and show what kind of risk their customers might have. So it's really a full stack solution. And then lastly, I'd say that on the Digi side, so we're there to help our customers with SBOM and with security and risk management, as you can see on the right. And with that said, I'll give it back to Fred.
Thank you, Harald. So, kind of continuing to move up, let's move off to Prakash, VP of Collaboration and Connected Solutions for Tata Communications. Welcome, Prakash.
Oops. I think I was talking in mute. Sorry about that. Hi, Fred. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So just to introduce myself, I'm Prakash Nagarajan, part of Tata Communications. And in my current role, I head one of the product line called Tata Communications Move, which is primarily an IoT product, which is an intelligent and secured connectivity management platform. So I just wanted to quickly run through what Tata Communication is all about, and then how it plays. The SBOM plays a key role in whatever functions we are delivering to our services, to the customer services, and then what are the good practices also that we have been following in terms of addressing the IoT security as a key concern. Yeah. So if you can move the next slide. So Tata Communication is a Comtech player where we wanted to unleash the potential of our enterprises, where we place services in a completed digital fabric aspects of it. So we have multiple fabrics where the network fabric or a cloud fabric and IoT fabric, how this encompasses the entire digital fabric, we are able to bring in together and then address the services to our customers. So that is what Tata Communication is. We are globally have a footprint with 190 countries, as well as with the revenue of around $2.5 billion as of March FY24. So that's what we are. And moving on to what exactly SBOM is all about, I think Harald briefly touched upon SBOM as a topic. And what I understand is that the SBOM market is going to significantly grow between now and 2030 with the CAGR of around 31.44%. Which is a skyrocketing number, what we are really looking at. But at the same time, organizations are very having challenges in terms of applying those practices in their day-to-day stuff, because the whole IoT ecosystem is federated as well as heterogeneous, a composition of, say, the devices or hardware and software with a lot of open source modules that is coming in. So it's becoming very complex as we move on. So some of the challenges that obviously we are looking at mainly on copyright, and then some of the patches, security patches, what it goes in roughly around average of 60 to 120 days to get in terms of the implementation. So all those things really put ourselves into looking at with a very close lens of SBOM as a topic, which is going to address IoT security in overall. So with that one, if I move on, this again, if you look at the SBOM, it's just an enabler. It's not going to solve the problem of IoT security by having a tool or so. It is going to provide a method and also the practice, how you diligently practice it. There are certain organizations we are really doing it in a fantastic way, and certain organizations really got into this one to do that one. So if you look at some of the SBOM standards, there are 3 accredited standards like the SPDX or the Cyclone DX and Software ID. So these things really bring the practices into fruition when you are applying the IoT security in Fusion. So when you are sharing the SBOM related details, the National Association of Telecommunication Association of the US, so they have described what are the key ingredients that goes into SBOM, which would be primarily the author of the software or the version, the timestamp and all of them, and also in which how you are able to go and then push that information into the downstream systems. So that could be a source code or certain binaries or a package binaries, how you really push that in a certain function or a fashion through the standards, and then it be consumed by either an operator or a supplier or a user, device user. And in order to look at that, some of the IoT supplier, what really they need to do is, it's more of a best practices. I would say that is creating the SBOM as a charter. In Tata Communication, we have been doing it fairly meticulously. While we have, it is a journey. Like it's not just a destination; it is a journey. We have started around a couple of years back, and then we have been improvising through this, bringing all the supply chain elements into the mix, as well as combine that with some of the tools that we have created in-house, the security tools. On top of it, you layer around that from an information security point of view to deliver that piece of work. So that's what we are doing in Tata Communication with respect to SBOM. And last but not the least of this slide, so this is really our unified security for IoT implementation, what we offer. So this consists of 3 pillars: the IoT Safe, which is obviously given by the standards by the GSMA, and we have the iJura, which is an inline threat protection and prevention system, and in addition to that, the Net Foundry, which is an zero trust based end-to-end connectivity from a device to the cloud story. So with these 3 things culminating into a pure unified security offering, we are able to address the IoT security in a reasonable fashion. So that is what we are offering from Tata Communication to our IoT implementations. So with that, I conclude, and then I'm happy for any questions, Fred.
Thank you, Prakash. Very, very good, and glad we could hear you. So clearly, as we've kind of set the table here, there's lots of different software in different stacks, and managing and keeping an inventory of those is very key. And that's why it's very good to introduce Sridhar, and he is the CTO of SOMOS. And you've got a different perspective on this as well, and we can't wait to hear. So an introduction from you would be great, Sridhar.
Thank you, Fred. For everybody, my name is Sri Ramachandran. I'm the CTO of SOMOS. And Fred, if you and I, we have to measure our experience in decades. So we've seen a lot of different things happen in this industry, even, when it was called M2M or even before that. So clearly the security posture of all those things have evolved. And we really need to keep abreast of all the security challenges. But before I go into the security challenges, I want to give people a context about SOMOS. So SOMOS is an industry expert in connected asset services, identity management, and fraud prevention. So what we do is our real thing is about how we can expose risks using identity management. So we look at identifiers as phone numbers, as IMEIs, as MAC IDs, and so on. And we put together the overall lifecycle management of those identifier attributes and then expose risks with respect to numbers, so we can actually prevent robocalls and so on, as well as expose security risks in IoT systems and devices. We're also the North American numbering plan administrator, so pretty much any phone number in US, Canada, and 20 other Caribbean countries are issued by us, and we manage the life cycle of those identities. And our scope is global. We offer solutions around fraud prevention, compliance, and security globally. And that's what we do. One of the things that we need to understand about IoT is we've been talking about IoT systems, but what we specifically focus on is about securing IoT devices. So IoT devices are interesting because they offer a bigger challenge than other traditional systems. So a typical IoT system is comprised of a device, a network that actually carries the data from the IoT device to a backend system that's hosted in a cloud or an app or an application that actually consumes that data and then sends it to for a business critical decision making, right? But the thing that's really hard to secure is the IoT device. There are IT methodologies that can be extended for network security and potentially for application security. But when it comes to IoT devices, the challenges are really unique. We kind of simplistically view the IoT device as broken into three parts or three layers. The first one is the identities, configuration, and metadata. For IoT devices, the identities are very fragmented. The device has a network identity, a serial number, an IMSI, and so many other things. And each identity tends to have its own stakeholder for various manageability aspects. And so understanding and providing a comprehensive view of all the identities is itself a challenge. And enterprises, the ultimate users of those IoT devices, struggle to manage those IoT devices. The second thing is the hardware bill of materials. The reason the hardware bill of materials, or at least understanding what the big picture components are that goes into the hardware, is important from a support and technology obsolescence perspective, right? So you may have a device that may have a module that maybe perhaps supports only 3G, and now you're trying to deploy it in a network that does not support 3G. And so what happens? So you have technology obsolescence issues that you need to be aware of. You need to be aware of what is actually put into the actual IoT device to understand technology, potential warranty issues, as well as anything related to compliance. The last and the biggest piece, and which is the main topic of interest today, is the software. And the software bill of materials is a new aspect that is coming to the fore now. So typically, most software firmware put into an IoT device has its own supply chain. Supply chain meaning, so there is a team that develops the software, but potentially they're also taking open source components, or they have components built by third parties, or actually licensing from third parties, putting it into that particular final image that goes into the IoT device. Understanding what all those components are is really important, because the vulnerabilities in the software or firmware can come up in any one of those things. And understanding the software bill of materials allows us to actually individually look at what the vulnerabilities are with each of those components and keep track of it. And we're going to talk more about this, but to quickly say how SOMOS looks at this is, so we have a device registry that captures the identities, the hardware bill of material, key elements of the hardware bill of materials, and the software bill of materials for these devices, and then puts together a comprehensive view of the vulnerabilities for compliance and for all other reasons that are necessary. And so we have different stakeholders who get different benefits from this. Obviously, enterprises and service providers, especially managed service providers and systems integrators, view this registry as a way for them to make sure that the security vulnerabilities are tracked and to keep the posture of those IoT device up to date, right? When you look at OEMs, this is a way for them to maintain and even publish their hardware and software bill of materials could be for compliance, it could actually be for regulation purposes, and so on. And then we also keep track of this information for the certification purposes, so we can actually make sure that all the devices are operating as per compliance rules already established. So overall, it's a very comprehensive view of the IoT device and all of its attributes to make sure that we are in compliance and we have a very strong security posture, having a view of the continuous vulnerability management of the software in that. So very high level summary, we look at the overall, provide device transparency, provide a view into the certification and vulnerabilities associated with the hardware and the software. We provide a way to actually go back. So if there is a way, if there is unfortunately a breach of a particular a vulnerability, if you want to go back and see what devices have been affected by that, we actually have a very quick way to go back from a vulnerability to actually indicate all the devices that have been affected by that, which is a very powerful tool that's used by enterprises to actually, by CISOs and by the enterprise IT managers, to really get a handle on knowing which devices have been affected. And obviously, this is part of an overall compliance and governance that we offer to enterprises. So that's a quick overview of the challenges of managing IoT devices and the value we offer. So back to you, Fred.
Very good. Well, I think, as the audience and myself listen to the four introductions, I think the title is actually quite good. This is a journey. It is not a set it and forget it once and done deal. While IoT devices sometimes are deployed in field for years, over those years, we've had some really good advancements to help manage the life cycle, the updatings, FODA, over-the-air updates. So many things have come to market to help us manage, secure, and update these devices. And with that, it's injected the problem of now life cycle management of products you've shipped. So there's not a static software bill of materials. I liked the comment about Patch Tuesday and Exploit Wednesday. It sounds terrifying, but it also injects change. So when changes are found or required, whether it's in open source libraries or exploits or threats, tell it, you guys are going to push something potentially down to the module. There might be a device that's moving around with a soft SIM or multi-IMSI environment. It might change networks and operators. The application in the enterprise is going to change versions of destinations and applications where this data is going. So there are so many moving parts here. And I'll open this up to everybody. Who's responsible in the end? If there's an exploit, how does it push from the user who had the exploit down to, I'm glad I had an SBOM from Telit. I'm really glad I had, move management and my connection management had an SBOM, so I know that my connection management was good. Or, golly, the device that I had was good. How is a buyer, what is he obligated for? What is he at risk of? And how does he look down? Because we have the whole supply chain here to really feel comfortable that they have a handle on this, because the penalties can be huge. And we'll start in the same order that we went. Florian, maybe we go with you, Harald, and then Prakash, and then we'll let Shri kind of wrap it up on that question.
Mute.
There you go. Florian, you're muted.
No.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So let me begin. So I think a good starting point, what we have in IoT, especially since we are kind of all creating the devices and solutions together, is this close cooperation. Yeah? Aside from the SBOM, as let's say, handing over some precise document, there is still the relationship between the different partners. Yeah? And I think we shouldn't forget that, because the SBOM will evolve, is maybe not perfect today, but this relationship is the foundation for making it better and maybe even adding something different to it and finding a way to do that. And I think it's a dynamic environment, and this relationship, this capability of support each other, I think that's kind of the starting point we need to evolve this, to go on this journey.
Right. Harald?
Yeah, so I would agree with what Florian had said. It's ultimately from the customer, from the user down, right? If a device gets breached, right, it affects the users, the customers' operations, right? And then of course they're struggling, right? They have to figure out how to restore operations, right, to continue business, as disaster recovery, business continuity plans kick into action, right? And it's a very disruptive thing. So arming the user with and those organizations with that information that SBOM can provide. It's not the only thing, right? But it's one of the tools in the tool chest. And doing this in a consistent and in a standardized format, I think that's a big value, right? And because before, many companies were doing, software composition analysis or SCA, or they were doing, software application security testing, right? But all of this information was kind of in a proprietary format, right? And as a user, if I would ask, my partner, my supplier, and say, hey, so are your products secure? Yeah, sure they are, right? So here's our, report, right? And, some companies do a better job than others, but the SBOM provides that transparency, right? And it's not perfect, but like Florian had said, but it's the first step, right? And then it gives the enterprise the information that they can then assess the risk. Hey, is this really something, and how to mitigate it? Oh, it looks like it might help them also with faster patching, right? Because they know, oh yeah, this specific component was at issue, right? I need to get a patch here for this software component, right? Or for this piece. So I think it really empowers the user, right? and it gives them more information that they can use as part of the risk management process.
Great. Prakash?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Fred, and then Florian and Harold nailed it. And from my perspective, I think if you look at really, that's one of the reason we have really created this digital fabric, because most of the organizations are struggling with islands of solutions or cloud implementations or so, but many times it's not really connected together to see where exactly the whole set of SBOM or the software or hardware that is coming into picture. And what from our experience, if you look at whenever we go and meet the customers, they are looking to see how we can give a platform view instead of just very small point solutions. So that way, many of the companies are able to really extend whatever the services into a platform or a digital fabric, what we call it here, so that it really stitches the fabric from, say, IoT fabric to the network or to the cloud, in addition to the customer experience fabric, all of them stitched together, so they are able to really understand where exactly all these things are coming up together. And SBOM plays a very important role in terms of whoever is driving the software code as a software supplier, how it really percolates those information through these standards, what I talked about, into a device maker, and then also to the device operator. So that's something will evolve, like what Florian and Harold talked about. But many of the organizations really fiddling around what really is all about. How do we really do that one? While it may seem like a process or so, but it's going to really help in the long time, especially with the whole IoT ecosystem is evolving over and above. So this is going to be my view.
So Shri, before you jump in, let me kind of modify the question a bit. So again, there's these islands, right, in the past, but there's still organizations in kind of islands. How are SBOMs shared? So if I'm the box maker, how do I get the SBOM from Telit? If I'm a solution provider, how do I get the SBOM from Harald? If I'm an enterprise user, how do I request the SBOM? Are these processes, are these non-disclosure agreements, are these opportunities, would someone think, oh my gosh, this is a risk for reverse engineering? What's exposed, what isn't exposed, and what tools are they? And I think that sets you up to answer some of those questions, Shri.
Okay, perfect. Yes, because this is a great setup, Fred. Thank you. So the thing we see is that there are essentially direct enterprise ownership of devices, right? They're putting together IoT system, they own it. Then there are connectivity service providers providing the connectivity. So that's another layer. And then you have the managed service providers who could be another owner, but providing a service to an enterprise, right? So they have different constituents putting together the overall IoT solution. And they need to be the one who are responsible for making sure that they have the SBOMs for their IoT devices and making sure that they are tracking the vulnerabilities. And so what we've done is we've made sure that we have a system where you can collect all of these independent. We're agnostic to the device manufacturer, we're agnostic to the actual use case and the connectivity type. So it doesn't matter what the IoT device is being used for, right? It could be the same device being used in a Wi-Fi Ethernet inside a building, and then outside it could be cellular. But it doesn't matter what the use case is. We can capture the software bill of materials and store it in the standardized form. And this is, in the case of the disclosure aspect, this is, since it's owned by the enterprise, only they have visibility to it. Doesn't need to be shared to other parties. So essentially, it's part of their contract between them and the device manufacturer to make sure that it's captured and it's there. And it's a way for them to make sure that they have a way to track vulnerabilities, because this continuous threat monitoring is the new frontier in actually figuring out security. So we need a way to track security threats against the software bill of materials, each component, to know what's happening. So let me give you an example. This is a real example. So you remember back in 2015, 2016, the SolarWinds exposure and the Log4j, it was a huge thing that happened in the world in 2015, 2016. Today, 30% of IoT devices still have that vulnerability. 30%, right? So it's still not fixed. And we expose that, and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this something that was addressed by the whole world, we thought the whole world addressed it back in 2015, is still there, right? So it provides a new layer of visibility that was just not there before, because today you buy a device, it's kind of opaque what is inside, but now we can actually know the various components and what the vulnerabilities are for that.
Okay, very good. So what differentiates a solution that an enterprise or a government or a utility is buying and they're serious about this versus paying attention to what happens in a consumer-based IoT product? Who becomes responsible there to ask the key questions? Because the buyer is probably very unknown. They're just buying a service. So, how do you see that, as a pressure point in the industry? Or is that where government regulation comes in and they're trying to protect the consumer? Talk to that.
Yeah, do you want me to start?
We'll go the other way. We'll start with you.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So yeah, you're exactly right, Fred. This is where government regulation comes in, right? So if you look at in the US, the FCC came out with the Cyber Trust Mark, which is essentially a way for consumers to understand what is inside their devices. That's the first thing. And secondly, what kind of support can they expect? Because typically the warranty doesn't go beyond a year, right? So what happens beyond that? Will I still get a firmware update that will patch any security vulnerabilities, or am I completely exposed? And this is not something that the industry can solve. I think this is done by regulation. So I think part of the Cyber Trust Mark was to expose that. And when you look at PTSI and NIS2 and the CRA in Europe, they've actually explicitly stated that software for the software support aspect for a certain number of years after a device is actually released. So these are all regulations coming in, and it's putting a true ownership of the software onto the industry to make sure that the security vulnerabilities are tracked and patched.
Very good. So Prakash, how does Move and some of your assets help play in this kind of the whole fabric management?
Okay, I think as Sridhar talked about the regulation, right? So something similar in Tata Communication again. So the regulatory aspects of it is fully covered, because when we are looking at global operations, every region has its own set of regulations that's coming, especially when it comes to the telecom and connectivity management aspects of it. If especially in certain areas you can't have a permanent roaming. So which means that you will end up in having a tie-up with the local MNO partners also to deliver those kind of services. So which means that you will end up in onboarding a new set of suppliers in that region, and which really will include all those software and hardware necessary hardwares to be baked into the overall platform to deliver the intended services. So it could be a consumer MVNO services, for example, or it could be an IoT, which is a mission-to-mission one communication. We are extending that one. So those nuances are very carefully thought through. So there is a definite period where we are looking to do certain evaluation specific to that country or region, which is supported obviously by the legal teams. And then in addition to that, the supply chain plays a very key role in bringing those aspects into the overall platform build. So that's the way we are really looking at to do that.
Great. Harald, when your customers ask you to manage it for them, this responsibility also probably more so falls even on Digi. So, address the question through those optics, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's we provide the tools for customers to self-manage, right? And then, they have that visibility. But if we're managing, on their behalf, because, the device management is not their core competency, then yes, we're monitoring that, and we're doing that today. And if there is a vulnerability, it's a constant feedback cycle, right? How are we doing? What new vulnerabilities have been discovered, right? Through, there's so many different, feeds that you can get we'll look at those, determine not only the vulnerability, but then also the exploitability, because those are two different concepts, right? Even though a piece of software or some component is vulnerable, doesn't mean that in the context of the system that vulnerability is exploitable. So we're looking at that as well. And then take action, right? Provide based on the severity of the issue, we take action within 24 hours. If it's less of an issue, we pick up a change in the next patch cycle, right? And we have all of that publicly stated on our website, which is also a key piece of transparency, right? As a buyer or as a user, how is that partner that I'm working with? How are they dealing with these things, right? Are they keeping it, secret, or are they transparent about it?
Great. So, Florian, what you do, I know what you do very well, but what a lot of folks do, you're the kind of the magic. There's this chip inside that kind of talks to the network and it does all this stuff. So you're very much an ingredient brand in these solutions. What can you tell kind of the buying community? How does, as an example, that there's many module makers, but how do you guys kind of really excel at monitoring the threats, the patches, notifying customers wherever they are in the value chain, this is coming, this needs to be addressed. Just from as an ingredient brand, I think what you have to say is very, very important.
Yeah, Fred. So I think where we are coming from, and that's maybe also a little bit in the nature of the module, is that we are coming from a very specific task we have to fulfill with the module, using like very specific components, having maybe code which is not the common compute code which you find in vulnerability databases, because we have DSP code or other things which are not really known broadly. Right. So that's why we have a special responsibility to look at that, to track that, and that's kind of what we do and what we did for a long time. I mean, we have Telit Cinterion, which is a merger between Telit and the Thales Gemalto module part, and I'm from the Gemalto Thales side, and of course security is a very high priority, and we started to really look at the module and at what's special, because as I said, we don't have a general compute environment. Vulnerabilities are you can say creeping in a different way maybe, and this is what we have to understand. And we are also crossing over very easy to the topic of reliability, which is also very important for IoT, because there could be a critical task linked to that. So all this complex, we have to continuously monitor, we have to do extensive testing, and then maybe going back to the software bill of material and how this could be done maybe for more consumer near products, or not every customer maybe can completely understand this, and especially if you have very specific hardware linking it to actually vulnerability statements, and then even making the next level talking about, can there be an exploit, which is something different again, because you don't know how this vulnerability is embedded into the device or into the architecture. So there, I think probably as with today approvals which we have for modules like FCC, all the others related to the communication standard, I think there might be a way through notified bodies, which then somehow have a look at the SBOM and aggregate that on that side.
Okay, great. So we have one quick question, and I'll throw this to you, Prakash, just for the heck of it. So it's a question that just came in. It says, in this ecosystem of all these devices connected to applications and networks, are these devices nowadays, are they using just a TCP/IP protocol when they get connected to the compute server? And if so, elaborate. And is that a threat, or how is that managed? You might talk about APNs and other stuff, but how does that work? Just for the question that was asked here, and then I want to kind of wrap up the call and let you guys all have some closing statements.
Okay, so if you look at, if I understand correctly, the APN based routing when you are looking at. So obviously I was talking about one of the inline threat detection mechanism called IJURA, right? So that is predominantly through an APN settings. Okay, so it's basically, it's not typically, most of the time the IoT security is driven or revolving around having an agent sitting either in a client side or a server side. So that's going to be very cumbersome, especially when you have a federated systems which are implemented across different remote locations or so. It's putting an agent either through a OTA process or through a physical one. So it's going to be a very tough one. So that's one of the reason. What it looks like is how we can look at an agentless inline threat detection services, which is next to the network. So whatever is the whole traffic that is coming into the network, so how do we really filter that one, and then before it's moving into different cloud services or cloud storage or an application servers or enterprise services. So that is what we are really looking at. So that is predominantly through an APN related services that we do, and that's where we address that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yes, all these devices, if they're cellular based or connected IoT, they are connected in some sort of an IP protocol, whether it's CoAP, MQTT, lightweight M2M, and standards based. Just it can be custom TCP IP packets as well. So they are connected. So there's lots of ways to look kind of on the wire and through tunnels, if you will, in the network. So I just wanted to try to catch that. That was the last question that just came in before we close. But we're approaching the end. I want to remind all of our listeners that please go to the handout section of this webinar. There's a lot of downloadable content from our speakers here that might give you some more in-depth perspectives. If we could, let's start again at the beginning at Florian, and we'll end at Shri. 1 minute, just kind of closing thoughts, topics, any call to action you might have for the audience.
Okay, thanks, Fred. So from my perspective, SBOM is clearly a valuable element complementing existing security measures. And I think bringing this together is very important. And especially for IoT, we have to look really at the specifics of the IoT solutions, and then find a way really to create out of the SBOM meaningful and actionable implementations, and somehow translate this really. So we have an excellent starting point, but as the title said, it's a journey. We have a lot to explore.
Thank you, Harald.
Yeah, so it is a scary world out there, right? And over the last years, more and more accelerating, the security landscape for IT devices has really changed, right? And enterprises have to evolve as well at that pace or even faster, right? When they think about IoT security. Tools like SBOM are there to help, right? There's many other tools that they may be already looking at, they're maybe already using, like XDR platforms, right? And other things to really have a heightened understanding of all the assets they have, that's the risk involved. And if somebody does not have the expertise, I mean, with the companies on this panel here, work with a trusted partner to select the building blocks for your solution, and then work with the partner to deploy and securely manage the deployment through the life cycle of the product, not just when it gets deployed, but from there to when it actually is taking out of service.
Great. Prakash.
Yeah, I think Florian and Harald summarized quite well. And I just wanted to add, this is going to be a very collaborative effort, because again, we have quite a lot of ecosystem players coming in and evolving over a period of time. And then IoT systems will always gain attention. So having the SBOM would be an enabler, and then how do we collaborate effectively with the software suppliers or the hardware makers, whether it's a device or so. And SBOM being a tool would definitely be a very helping hand in the days to come for many enterprises, which will address the end consumer as well as some of the enterprises. Yeah.
Thank you.
So lastly, three things. So if you ever want to have SBOM demystified, send an email to iot@somos.com and we'd be glad to help you out. The second thing is we work in an ecosystem. So we don't pick to say we only work with device manufacturers and so on. So we work with everybody in the ecosystem, whether you're a service provider, a device OEM, or a body that wants to provide connectivity or whatever, right? So we will work with all of you to make things happen. And if you still don't know what or how to generate an SBOM, you can just send the binary image to us. You can contact us, you can send the binary image to us, and we have a partner by which we can actually generate a standard SBOM for you for your firmware images. So those are the three things as a call to action, as a wrap up that I have.
Thank you. Well, first, in closing, I want to thank all four of you for tremendous insights and a great overview of this this collaborative event that the industry has to take to kind of make the IoT world safer. As we said, this is an industry collaboration. As part of that, the IMC is very involved in understanding how we can improve the security management, and hopefully even affect policy as governments and agencies are putting policy in place to try to control this. The best practices, I think, come from us. We're the folks that have done IoT forever, and we're now focusing on this as a key issue to manage. So with that, I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the presenters, and I'll turn it back quickly to Keith to close. You're on mute, Keith.
Sorry. Thanks, Fred. And a special thanks to you for moderating, but also to Florian from Telit, Harald from Digi, Prakash from Tata, and Shri from SOMOS, of course. And thanks to all in our audience who were able to attend. Tomorrow, we'll host another panel, this one on asset tracking on a global scale. I'd encourage everyone with an interest in asset tracking, and that's surely a lot of us, to join us at 10 a.m. on U.S. East Coast time. You can access today's sessions as well as that session tomorrow via the IMC website. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much.